In December of 2022, the northeastern US was hit by a devastating 4-day blizzard. In some areas, the snowstorm dumped several feet of snow in a matter of just a couple of hours. This happened during the height of that year's holiday travel season, and that snowstorm, it knocked out power for about 100,000 people. It paralyzed most all emergency services. It effectively stopped all travel in general, including holiday travel, and when all was said and done, it left at least 47 people dead. Now, Buffalo, New York, and the surrounding Buffalo area was hit particularly hard. The death toll in just that one area was over 30 people. Now, some of those people, they died as a result of heart complications because they overexerted themselves shoveling snow all of a sudden. However, a non-insignificant portion of the deaths, about 10%, were a result of motorists who were trapped in their vehicles for an extended period of time in freezing temperatures beyond the reach of any emergency service personnel. These people sadly literally froze to death in their cars and in their trucks. For example, a 22-year-old young woman named Andell Taylor, she got stuck on the road, and even though she was literally only about 6 minutes from her home, the weather conditions outside were so bad that she was not able to venture away from her car at all. And because the roads were blocked by a severe snowstorm and there weren't enough snow plows to deal with it all, help never arrived, and sadly, the young woman died. And before she died, she shot a short video that her family later released to the media. Here it is.
Andell Taylor's family confirming with ABC News she filmed this video as she was trapped in her car, her family calling her the most kind-hearted and loving person.
And unfortunately, we've seen this sad scenario play out many, many times before when a natural disaster strikes somewhere. People assume, sometimes fatally, that first responders will arrive to save them from a desperate situation. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. Sometimes you really have to be your own first responder. And so, in that vein, since we're heading into the winter season, I'd like to give you some recommendations on things that you can do to protect both yourself as well as your family. Let's dive into the winter essentials that you'll need for a vehicle survival kit. And what's really great about this list is that a lot of these items are useful in everyday situations, not just in life-saving emergencies. They're pretty handy just in general to have in the car. Up on your screen right now is a checklist which comes from the National Weather Service. These are the basic items that they recommend that every driver keep in their car during the winter months in case of emergency. Let's go through that full list together, and I'll note that Eric, the researcher, he picked out some good recommendations based on his own life experience as a Pennsylvania prepper. Firstly, our flashlights and batteries. Obviously, in the dark at nighttime, you will need to see, especially if you run out of gas in the car. The flashlight that you see up on your screen is a solid choice, very bright, lasts a long time. And I mean, generally, super strong LED lights are nice, but they burn through batteries pretty quickly. And so if you invest in one of these flashlights, make sure you get some decent AA or AAA batteries in the car. But one thing to note is that you should make sure that you have several sets of batteries, including backups. And make sure that the batteries are good because, well, sometimes batteries degrade over time, especially in colder climates like during the winter. And so it's good to add fresh batteries when the temperatures drop in the winter and replace them every spring. Also, you can get a flashlight that you hand pump, and so you don't need to worry about batteries at all. Also, another good option are these right here, solid outdoor sportsman candles. They provide warmth as well as light. They can last for hours. Just, of course, when you're using them, be careful that you don't accidentally start a fire in the car. Another good option is a lantern, like this one here. The benefit of one of these is that they're solar powered and they can last for several hours and they can light up the inside of the car in a nice ambient way, unlike a flashlight, which is a more direct type of light. The downside, of course, is that you need to make sure that you leave it somewhere in the car that you can charge it with enough sunlight when the sun is out. So it's kind of a good and bad situation. Another good option is this one here. It's an LED headlamp that'll give you some light as well as free up your hands at the same time. In theory, you never know how long you might be trapped in your car and the types of situations that you'll find yourself in. And so it's a good idea, if you can afford it, to get all of the above. The flashlight, the candles, the lantern, as well as the headlamp. That way you're prepared for anything, at least light related. Next up is a basic all-season first aid kit. The one up on your screen is pretty good. It's a basic boo-boo kit. It includes everything like Band-Aids, antibacterial wipes, treatments for basic cuts and bruises, a simple trauma kit, things like that. However, if you want to take it a step further, There's also this one here, which is great for keeping around the car. It's great for things like broken bones, gunshot wounds, lacerations, controlling serious blood loss. It even includes things like tourniquets, splints, pressure dressings, things like that. Essentially, it has all the basic necessities you will need to keep a situation under control until the EMTs arrive, even if that takes a long time. And one important thing to note is if you get one of these kits, basically no matter which kit you get, do take some time to familiarize yourself with everything in that kit. Because even if you have something, but you don't know that you have it, it doesn't do you any good. Also, if you don't know how to use something in the kit, like a tourniquet or a stitch bandage, well, do consider taking like a local class. They're usually offered for free by fire departments, or at the very least, watch some YouTube videos when you have the chance. That way you can get an idea of how each individual part of the trauma kit works. So that way when you need it, at the very least, you'll have a basic idea of how it should work. Next up is a snow shovel. Very simple. The one up on your screen is solid. Doesn't have to be a full-size shovel. Just something sturdy that you can use to dig out your tires if you happen to hit a snow ditch. Just do consider getting something that is solid. Perhaps don't get like a cheap plastic shovel that will likely break in an emergency. Pay the few extra dollars to get the metal or carbon fiber shovel, because ultimately, even if you do save a few dollars by buying the cheap plastic shovel, if it breaks, you're gonna have to buy a new one anyway, so it'll wind up costing you more money in the end. And that's probably true for everything on the list as well. Next up is the ice scraper with brush. The one up on your screen is pretty good, but really most of them are the same. They're very simple. And if you already live somewhere in the Northeast, you probably already have one anyway. They're great. You can scrape your windshield from the ice, and then you can scrape off the snow. Very simple, very utilitarian. Next up is blankets and or sleeping bags. Now the one up on your screen is solid. It's warm, it's easy to store away. And in terms of the type of blanket you should get, a wool blanket is really ideal. The protein keratin that's in wool, it helps to regulate body temperature, and it provides insulation, which allows wool blankets to really retain heat effectively. In fact, a good wool blanket, it'll hold warmth even if it happens to be wet. Wool, it also works as a good top layer over a nice sleeping bag. This one here is pretty good, but in general, the sleeping bag industry is massive. There's an endless amount of different options. I would just really recommend something that has synthetic materials that can retain as much heat as possible. And also, if your sleeping bag doesn't already come with one, consider keeping an inflatable pillow in your car as well, just in case you'll need to sleep there overnight. You can have a decent rest. When it's not inflated, those type of pillows, they take up very little space. They're super, super thin. Next up is non-perishable food. Now, obviously, it's not realistic to keep like a whole stocked fridge or freezer in your car all the time in your winter kit, but it is a good idea to keep at least some snacks on hand at all times. Things like jerky, tuna packs, nuts, they can give you lots of protein. Chocolate, especially in the winter time, likely won't melt, and it can give you a good boost of morale right when you need it. If you want to take it up a level, you can actually keep some MREs in the car. They, at least allegedly, last for years, and they come with an internal heating device that can heat the food just by splashing some water on it. And also, if you want to go to the next level, you can get freeze-dried hiking foods. They do actually require a bit of warm water to use, and they're a bit pricey, but they actually taste good. They can really warm you up, and they can boost your morale if you're stuck in your car during a winter snowstorm. And speaking of water, you do want to keep some water in the car as well at all times. In fact, a good idea is just to keep a gallon of water in your car at all times. It's not only good for winter-related emergencies, but also, you can use it to refill a radiator in case of a bad leak or an overheated engine. So, it's pretty versatile. You can also use it for things like washing hands, cleaning wounds, cooking food, things like that. And in terms of storage, do make sure that you keep the water out of any direct sunlight. That'll help prevent bacterial buildup and growth and algae formation, things like that. And there are various ways to store the water. You can use plastic, steel, glass, aluminum. Steel is really a good option, especially for both the summer and the winter months. It's BPA free, and it's really good at insulating the water, especially better than the other options available. However, if you leave the water in your car for a long period of time, the water will likely freeze eventually. That's why you should also consider having a rocket propane stove to cook with, or to at least provide a blast of warmth. And when you're keeping it in the container, do keep a little bit of extra room. That way, when the water freezes, it won't just burst the container as well. I would also recommend keeping a simple tin cup in your car in the prep kit, so that you can scoop up snow into it and then melt it down just in case, sort of a last ditch scenario. And also, if you have the space in your car, if you have like a big truck or something like that, and you want to take it up one more level, you can also buy a camping gas stove, and you can keep it in your kit as well. These are surprisingly compact, and you can just attach like a small propane tank, and that way you can provide heat for hours, which is really cool. And you can also heat up water as well, use it for cooking, very versatile. Next up are booster cables, pretty self-explanatory. You just want to keep at least one set of booster cables in your car in case your battery dies or somebody else's battery dies and you want to help them. However, alongside the cables, I would also recommend investing in a portable jumper pack as well. With the pack, you can jump your own vehicle as well as multiple vehicles on a single charge. The pack, it keeps a charge for several months at a time, even if you keep it in the car for the winter months. And also what's great is that they are dual purpose. And so of course, they're good for emergencies. You can jump your car, but you can also use them to charge your phone. And so whether you live in a cold climate or a warm climate, well, it's really, really good to have both booster cables as well as a jumper pack in your car. Next up is clothing. Pretty simple, not anything complex. Just keep an extra set of warm clothing in a car in case of emergency. Insulated long underwear is really good. Some heavy-duty warm socks, maybe some gloves, a hooded sweatshirt, an extra winter jacket, a hat. Nothing has to be like super stylish or anything like that. Just make sure it is warm. And along that line, by the way, hand warmers are phenomenal. Like the ones up on your screen right now are great. They're single use, they're cheap, but they're extremely effective. They last for hours, and you basically just snap the packet, and the packet warms up and it remains warm for several hours. You can use them to line your sleeping bag to keep yourself warm. You can put them in your pockets and keep your hands warm. They are phenomenal. Then there is sand and kitty litter. A container of sand or kitty litter, they can be used to gain traction if you're spinning your tires in a ditch or if you find yourself like on a really icy surface. Pretty cheap too. Also, if you don't want to spend any money at all, well, listen, the government doesn't want you to know this, but the sand on beaches is free and you can take it home with you. Next, there is the cell phone and cell phone charger. Now, of course, everyone already carries their phones with them at all times, especially when they're driving, but do consider keeping an external means to charge your phone in your car because that could be really life-saving if you're stuck out somewhere for an extended period of time. Now, we already recommended the external jumper pack, which could double as a phone charger, but just do make sure that you keep all 3 different types of cords in your kit just in case either yourself or a family member or a friend is with you and they want to charge their device as well. Also, one really, really good tip is to leave an old cell phone in your car as well at all times. Usually, cell phones, even if you don't have a SIM card in there, you can still dial 911 and reach emergency services. And so leaving an old cell phone in the car is a phenomenal idea because if your cell phone, if something happens to it, let's say it dies, it gets lost, it doesn't work for some reason, it crashes, whatever it is, if you have an extra cell phone, well, you can use that cell phone to dial 911 in case of an emergency. So that's a phenomenal idea. Then lastly, you have flares, triangle, and other bright objects. These are obviously things used to get attention. Road flares are a great way to start a fire. Also in a pinch if you have to leave your vehicle and you really have to get access to like some burnable materials. Obviously, they're ideal for warning other drivers over your vehicle if you're in a sort of a blind spot. But be careful when you're deploying them, as other drivers could actually hit you when you're in the process of deploying them. The only drawback is that they do expire after about a half hour. And so a better alternative might be warning triangles that reflect headlights. They're made out of this really like reflective material so people can see it with their lamps. Another alternative is LED road signaling devices, which have a much longer activation time. They can go for hours on end. And so there you have it. If you keep just this basic list of items in your vehicle, well, you do stand a much better chance of surviving a roadside emergency in the winter where hypothermia or exposure can kill someone in a matter of minutes. Now, some back of the napkin math, it shows you that if you bought the following items from Amazon, like the ones we suggested, you're looking at a price tag of around $430-ish. You can see up on your screen the breakdown of the different items. And so basically, for under $500, you can harden your vehicle's defenses against all manner of disasters for both yourself as well as your family. Now, many of the items mentioned do come in handy at all times anyway, not just during emergencies, but during regular times as well. You can shovel things, you can clean and scrape your windshield, you can use water on the coolant, you can use the emergency phone to play a video game on. I don't know, something like that. You know, sorry, that video game thing didn't work out. Why would you use it? Now, we're not endorsing any of the products shown in particular. Rather, we are just giving you a ballpark figure to show you how much you might expect to pay if you don't already have any of these items. You can, of course, go lower, you can go cheaper, you can go more expensive, but expect to pay around $500 if you want that full list. You can, of course, shop around for better deals. Black Friday is coming up. It's a great day to buy things, but that's generally the idea, the ballpark that you should expect to pay. Also, aside from the basic items that we just went through, here are some additional items just to consider keeping in your vehicle year-round, not just in the winter. A seatbelt cutter, a window punch, any necessary medications, particularly something that you would need and you wouldn't be able to go for a few days without, painkillers, a spare tire, as well as a tire replacement kit like a jack and a lug wrench, antifreeze, motor oil to top off fluids in case of a leak, duct tape is always important, a poncho, an umbrella, a ratchet, a portable air compressor, a respirator, as well as goggles for wildfires or in case there's any nearby chemical explosions. For entertainment, in case you get stuck for a long period of time, have like a book, maybe a pack of cards, something like that, a fire extinguisher. Also, just in general, it's not a bad idea to keep an Apple AirTag or a tile in your car and then hook up that tile or Apple AirTag to your spouse's phone. That way, your spouse can always remotely track you in case you get lost, or in the case that your car gets stolen, you can track it remotely. Either way, as long as you trust your spouse to keep track of you, that's a good option. Now, obviously, investing in all these different prep items will take up a sizable amount of space in your vehicle. And for that reason, I recommend investing in some sort of organizational container, especially one that's inconspicuous, and it'll keep your prepping items out of sight as well as out of mind. The one you see up on your screen is pretty good. The portability with these things is not really a concern since these items will just remain in your car year round. And so something as simple as like a cheap plastic tote can get the job done as well. Or if you're just more concerned about aesthetics, they do make all manner of vehicle storage bags like the one you see up on your screen. Now, obviously, if you're going to be investing in all these preparation items, you will want to protect them. And so that's as simple as like locking your car doors at night or making sure they're locked when you leave the car in the parking lot. Also, keeping the items in containers out of view of passersby is a good idea. Consider tinting your windows to this end as well. That way people won't be able to see through it as your windows. Now, of course, tinting your windows will add to the cost, but just consider keeping it in mind. And so there you have it, a list of some of the basic as well as some of the additional items that you should be keeping in your car for winter as well as for general possible emergencies. And again, Black Friday is coming up. It's a great opportunity to buy these things. Usually on Black Friday, there's sales of like 10 to 50% off depending on the manufacturer. Now, of course, sometimes they kind of trick you. They say like, oh, it's 50% off, but they inflate the price before Black Friday. But I think generally like there's a good opportunity to buy things in bulk on Black Friday that you can save money on if you're going to buy them anyway. So consider doing that. But also do consider like, even if you're not going to buy everything on the list, do buy some of the things because it's just a good idea to have in the car. You never know when an emergency strikes, and a lot of those things just last forever. Like, how long does a shovel last? You can keep a shovel for 30 years without any issues, and you might not need it for 25 years, but on that 26th year, when you really need it, well, it's great to have it. So again, that list will be there. We'll throw all the links down into the description box below if you want to see some of those recommendations. And yeah, if you want to go back in the video too, you can sort of like pause it, screenshot it, and then go through the list to make sure that you are prepared for yourself and your family. And that's all. So I really hope that no disasters befall you, but just to be safe, I do hope you're also preparing yourself and your family for that possible scenario. What is that old saying? Pray for the best, but prepare for the worst. So that's all I have to say. Until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free and stay safe.